Hey guys, I got another tutorial for you. This one is going to be about creating a fairly simple but still great looking desktop like you see in a lot of people speed arts and stuff. Obviously very useful for, well, a very practical application of Photoshop. I will also be teaching you more theoretical techniques, or more impractical techniques, more advanced techniques, but this one's also quite advanced. As you can see, it's got a couple layers here with some layer masks and various options associated with them. Anyways, the biggest part of this is going to be creating this pattern that you can see in the background here, blade pattern, as the desktop is named after. We're just going to start out in this file and just turn off all the pattern things that's already there. It's a 600 pixel by 600 pixel document. If I can press Control Alt I to get the image size options, 600 pixels by 600 pixels, and I have gone over to the View menu, Show, and the Grid, so that I can create a perfectly symmetrical pattern. Or you can just take Control comma, Control comma. Anyways, let's just start out from the scratch here. I'm going to grab my shape tool, remember my rectangular shape tool down here, by pressing U. And I'm going to go ahead and set it to create shape rather than create path like I usually have it set to, just for convenience. And because I don't really want to do anything with the color or anything like that. Make sure your foreground is black. And I'll start off by just dragging a big middle bar, big thick middle bar, and actually I want it to be a little bit, there we go. I want it to be 6 from straight in the center, 3 out, and each way 3 segments out. It should snap for you. If not, go to View, turn on Snap. And mine's preset set to 60%. Yours will be set to 100%, and I'm just pressing 0 to get that. Just set it to 60%. Because we want the blade to not be completely see-through. And just call this middle thick vertical line, as I had named it before when I created it. Next, I'm just going to hit Control Alt T on this layer, and then rotate it either CW or CCW, clockwise or counterclockwise, it really doesn't matter. And make it only 4 thick, and then drag this one to snap right here in the second grid right here. So these are the grid. This is the grid, and these are the segments of the grid that are transparent. You can't really see them on the video, but you should be able to see them if you're following along. Just one little grid segment, so four individual segments. And just hit OK. Rename that whatever you want. I'm going to call it top thick line. And that should also be set to 60% opacity. Go ahead and click off that vector mask, hit Control Alt T to duplicate it again, and transform it. And just shift drag it down to constrain it to vertical, and go down to the bottom grid portion. And just call that bottom thick line. And now we're going to create a couple others. Duplicate this bottom thick line one, or I can always just take Control Alt T to transform and duplicate it at the same time. And then rotate 90 CC, and then center it on this one right here to the left, and this left guide, and then Alt drag these corner points so that you transform it in respect to the origin. And then it should only be 2 segments wide on either side of this guide right here. Click enter and change that to opacity 30%, and then just Control Alt T that right over to the other side, and then Control Alt T that. Well, actually we're going to call this one, we're going to call these 2 This one's going to be the left side line. This one's going to be right side line, and then Control Alt T that thing. Rotate it 90 CW again, and now this one we want to take one above, or one below actually, this one right here, and then just drag it so it's only one segment thick, and hit enter, and we'll just call that bottom thin line, and then Control Alt T, drag it up, call this bottom middle, and then make sure you don't have the vector mask also, just duplicate that inside the same shape. Duplicate the vector mask instead of the actual shape, so just Control Alt T the whole thing, drag it up here, make sure it snaps, and I'll call this top, Control Alt T again, shift drag it up to constrain it to perfectly vertical, and then just call this one top. And now just change all these, shift click on the bottom one and change all of them to 20% by hitting 2, opacity 20%. And there's our base pattern. We just want to Control A to select everything, which we have to have selected everything, to go over to edit and define pattern. This will define this as a new pattern, and I'm just going to call this played pattern. I actually already have it saved, but I'll just save a new one anyways. And now we can just Control D, deselect that, and we're going to go ahead and hit Control N. We'll start from new on the actual desktop. I would normally go with at least 1920 by 1080 because that's my desktop resolution, or higher, as you'll see in the project that I'm working on over here, which is going to be the largest and most advanced speed art, well, you really can't call it a speed art, but the largest and most advanced speed design project in the graphics community. But we'll wait for that. You guys can wait for that. Anyways, I would usually choose something bigger, but I'll just choose 1280 by 720. Make sure everything's right. Background content is transparent. All the rest, you can name whatever you want. I'm just going to call it Played Desktop. And just turn off the grids by hitting Control, comma. And then I'm going to fill this background with a color. Make it a 5% gray. Then I'm just going to call that background. Then I'm going to start to make a texture. Whoops. Start to make a texture. Hit Control Shift N to make a new layer. Call that background texture. This is just going to be a sort of cloth-like texture, kind of. And I'm going to fill it with a, this time it's going to be a 20% gray. And we're going to convert this to a smart object so that we can keep the filters that we apply non-destructive, so we can go back and edit them. And go to filter and start with a crackler. This is a very nice texture that has a nice pattern to it. Very useful for generating a variety of textures. Just take the size here to, I'm probably going to take it to 11. Take the crack depth to about 1 is good, and keep the crack brightness at 10. And now we're actually going to make another texture inside of this filter gallery. So just hit this new page icon, new effect. Automatically it will come in as crackler. You can already see how this texture is useful for creating sort of rock-like textures, but I'm going to switch it up. Switch this one out with texturizer and change texture to canvas so they get more of a papery effect, and change the scaling to 75 and the relief to 2, so we just get a little bit more of a sandpapery effect. There's your base. Now we're going to add a cloud, a filter, render clouds, and obviously that completely wipes out everything. So we're going to go open up your smart object on clouds, click on this little thing to edit the blending mode and opacity of that filter. In regular static, you'd actually go to edit fade immediately after you apply the filter, but with smart objects you can go back whenever you want. And I'm going to change this one to overlay and lower the opacity to about 30%. And then Alt, hold your Alt key and click and drag on cloud to duplicate it, and then go into the blending options and opacity and change it to multiply this time and lower it to about 25%. That just gives it a bit of variation. And now we're going to go back and go to filter, texture, texturizer. We're going to give it a bit more texture. First, do another 75% scaling texture just to have a small texture, and have the light coming from the right this time, so we get a sort of crosshatch type thing. And that's about good. Maybe raise it to 2 relief and press OK. And actually go back to the filter gallery here. I might have messed one thing up. Make sure texturizer is selected. Nope, light is on top. Okay, that's good. Okay, texturizer, keep that at normal everything. And now we're going to go to filter and another texturizer that is. This time make it a 200% scaling. And take the relief all the way down to 1. And actually on texturizer right here, this texturizer, we're actually going to go back and take the relief to 1 on this one too. And now we got a sort of clothy pattern going here. Just want one more thing. We want to go to filter, sharpen, smart sharpen. I've set up a keyboard shortcut, it really doesn't matter. Anyways, amount value of 150 is good, radius of 1.0, that just gives it a little bit of a sharpening effect. You can turn the preview on and off. You can see that'll be dimmed in the final composition. Oops, still have the shape tool selected. M for the marquee tool. And next we're going to insert the pattern. So hit Control Shift N, make a new layer, call it played pattern, and fill that with black, and then just take the fill opacity all the way down, because we don't need the black contents of the layer. We're just going to use it for the pattern overlay. Okay, go to pattern overlay, and if you scroll all the way down you should see the new played pattern. I had already created it, but choose it again, and I'm going to drop the scaling to 25%. Keep everything else generally the same. I might experiment with soft light possibly. Actually, yeah, take it to soft light. Take it to soft light and then just hit OK. And now we're going to give that a little bit of a layer mask. So go down to the add layer mask icon and click on it, and then go up to filter, render, and fibers. This filter right here is really useful for creating either wood-like effects or a nice faded layer mask, so that it looks like something is faded or aged or something like that. So keep strength at 1, vibrance around there, and I'm actually gonna click randomize again, because right now I'm getting a bit of a light one. Right there is pretty good. Try a couple more times. That's good enough. And then we're gonna go to filter, render, clouds, and obviously that wipes out everything we did with wood, so we have to go to edit, fade clouds, and change the mode to multiply. This will make everything really, really dark. So we have to hit Control L to bring up the levels, or you can go to image adjustments, levels, and just take the white point up to around 140. somewhere around there. And now we just want to lower the density of this mask in the masks panel, which you can get by going to the window menu, masks. Density will just basically lower the opacity so that it fades to white. It just goes whiter and whiter and whiter. And obviously with masking, that is, white reveals, black conceals. And we'll have an in-depth masking tutorial eventually. And probably I'm going to keep this one at about 50% for now. I didn't have soft light before. Let me see if I... Actually, I don't think I want soft light. Then I'll take the density up. I'm going to shift up arrow and take it up to 70%. It's good. And next, I am actually going to do one more thing to the mask. I'm going to go to Filter, Noise, Add Noise, and just add a little 20% noise just to give it a little bit more, make it look a little bit more like like a played pattern. Okay, we got that so far. Now we're going to make our text real quick. Get your text tool by hitting T. I've got the cake font, which you probably do have if you've downloaded any graphics pack or anything like that. You can just look it up online if you don't have it at thefont.com, and just grab your cake font, set the text size to 685 points, keep everything else the same, black, and then just click about the center of the image. That's actually a bit too big. I think it was only more about 68. Whoops. Okay, and then just type played. And actually, real quick, I'm actually going to set my center. So go to the background layer, hit Control T, Control R, and drag some rulers down. Snap them in there. Hit Escape to escape out of free transform. Hit Control R and hit Control semicolon. We'll go to View, Show, and then Rulers or Guides. So we have these guides. Control T played to free transform it. Drag it to the center, snap it in, and then Control semicolon to hide the guides. And I'm actually going to Control T that played and make it a bit bigger. That's about good. And next we're going to go into the played, and we're actually going to quickly take the fill opacity to 60% by hitting Shift 6. Then go into played blending options, give it a drop shadow. 75% is fine. Distance, take that to 0. Spread to 80. I'm going to have a similar style to what I had last tutorial with the avatar. It's kind of a follow-up to the avatar tutorial, and size 5 is fine. Inner shadow, we're going to want an inner shadow of 70% opacity. Distance 0. Choke should be 100%. Size 4. And then inner glow, we're going to take that to multiply, make it a black, and then the opacity should be at 30% because this is just a fading out shadow. And the choke should be at 100% and size at 6. And then of course it's not really working out too well so far, so we've got to put on a stroke. Now everything starts to come together a bit. Take the size to 1. Make sure position is center. And blend mode, take that to color dodge, and you won't see really anything. So take the opacity to 70%, 75%. And then you have a nice faded effect. And then we're just going to do one more thing. Put on a color overlay. Opacity, blend mode should be red default. If not, click on it, make it red, and blend mode should be at overlay. Got a nice little played there. And now I'm actually going to duplicate this layer mask by Alt, dragging it over to played. And we have to change one thing because right now it looks messed up. Go to the blending options and just put on layer mask hides effects. Because right here it's doing all this layer mask to all the effects, or the effects are not that. The effects are actually taking into account the layer mask before they apply the effects. So this is just going to make it look like it should look. And then just lower the density a bit to 60%. And now I'm actually going to duplicate this layer. So Alt drag it up. That's another way. You can also hit Control J or drag it down to new layer. And then I'm going to convert this to a smart object. So right click, convert to smart object. And then I'm going to go to Filter, Pixelate, Color Halftone. This is going to generate a halftone pattern, or a colorful halftone pattern that we can convert into something useful. Take the radius down to 4 pixels, and it's going to look terrible right there. So we have to go over to the channels panel, and as you can see in these ones, has a sort of played pattern in each one. The red and green aren't really going to work, or I mean the blue and green aren't going to work, because obviously you can see right there it's mostly just black. So go to red and control click on it to generate it as a selection, and then go to this played one and make a layer mask out of it, and just keep it as it is right there. And then we just want to actually what do we want to do? We want to lower the fill opacity on this, or we want to lower the opacity of this. Whoops. Just lower the opacity. I'm just going to scrub it down. Lower it to something like 40, or actually try putting it on a blend mode maybe. No, just lower the opacity to something like 40%. And then actually alt click between the two layers to make a clipping mask. And make sure it says blend clip layers as a group, turn that off. And actually take it back to opacity 100%, and I'm actually going to hit Control Shift U. This is a bit different than I did it last time, but I'm going to name that DSAT. Control Shift U will get you the hue saturation, not default though. You have to go back to adjustments and click hue saturation default. I just made my own keyboard shortcut. Take the saturation down, and take the lightness down a bit too. Actually, maybe I do want to invert this plate. Yeah, I do want to invert that plate layer mask. And then you can go ahead and get rid of this hue saturation. That's what I did last time. Oh, that's what I need to do. Delete this color halftone thing. And now we can re-invert it. And it looks a bit better. And then just lower the opacity a bit, down to 70%. That's fine, it really doesn't matter too much. Actually, there we go. Unclip it and then just have it full opacity. That is what I did, I think. Okay, now we're going to hit Control Shift Alt E to create a merged copy of this whole composition and rename that Blur. Go up to Filter, Blur, Lens Blur, set it to radius 9, that's about good. Just going to give it a light blur, and then we're going to add a layer mask to this. Get out a brush and make sure it's just set your foreground set to black. Make sure you just got a nice solid brush size about 900. Make sure that there's no brush tip shapes options, and just click in the middle, click a bit to the side, and click again to the side a bit over here, so you just have this light blurring around. in your layer mask, of course. Now get your marker key tool again and change the blending option to overlay. I'm going to hit Control-Shift-O to do that. Or you can just click here and then hit click overlay. And I thought that was a bit too light of an effect, so I'm actually going to control click on this icon and then hit Control-Shift+, or actually, because that won't work default, just go to modify and expand. And expand by 100 is fine. And then just hit Control Delete because my background is white. And you get in this effect, and then on the blur, go to Mask Panel and take the feather to 100 pixels. And then we just get this effect. It looks pretty nice. Yep. And what else did I want to do? Okay, on the blade layer right here, hit Control-Shift-M and name that contrast, because we're going to take up the contrast with a bit of curves. That actually, I keep forgetting those keyboard shortcuts don't work regularly, so just go up to curves and click on it. And then in this contrast layer, in the darks, just lower it a bit. Click on a point and lower it a bit in the darks. And right here around the highlights to midtones area, click and raise that. And actually the darks, don't take them quite so far down. So we just get a little bit extra contrast. And then above the blur layer, go over to your brightness contrast, click on it, just call that brighten. And lower it below blur. And just take the brightness up a bit to 30. 30 looks pretty good. And actually, let me just check if I'm missing anything from here. Come out with a quite different effect, as you can see. But actually, I like it better. It's a little more grungy. But this has been creating a simple desktop. And I hope you learned something, which you probably did, because I see very, very few people in the graphics community use as advanced effects and options that you have in Photoshop as I do. I'm one of the few who regularly uses layer masks and vector masks and options like color range and refine edge and stuff that you probably haven't even heard of. Anyways, I will be probably coming out with that massive design project that I've been working on probably in about a week, maybe a week and a half. It's going to be absolutely huge. It's probably going to take me, so far it's looking like it's going to take me about 10 hours to create even. And it's going to be probably just the biggest and most advanced speed art ever. Literally. So, I'll see you guys. Peace.